So before I do the April 16th, 2026 Board of Ed recap, I'm going to ask Richfield for your help. So if you come here over to administration and you click on business office and then come over here to budget and finance, you'll see the 2025-2026 budget. It goes all the way down to 2017-2018. I'm looking for the proposed budget for next year, so that would be 26-27. I was told it was online. I also looked under the Board of Ed tab. I couldn't find it. So if anybody can help me find it, just drop the link below. I would really appreciate it. A lot of people want to see it, myself included. And then obviously I will share that out once I have that information. I want to talk about two other things. So this is a silly one, but it's important, right? There were no cookies or chips tonight. So people were asking, like, where are the cookies and chips? There was a lot of people at the meeting tonight. And the answer is they decided to get rid of the food at the meeting. So not only the cookies and chips for the public, but the sandwiches for the trustees. And that comes out to like $2,000 a year that they're saving. It was a suggestion made, I believe, by multiple board members. And the thought process is, no, that's not going to save a job. However, it adds up and every little bit counts. So no more food. You have to bring your own cookies and chips. The second thing is that in February of 1876, Robert's Rules was published. And Robert's Rules is basically a guide to add order to chaotic meetings. And it is used in mayor and council and board of ed meetings all across the country. It's used in a lot of nonprofit, in school government, school clubs. You were probably sat through a meeting run by Robert's Rules, and there are very specific guidelines when to make motions, who can do what, and it explains everything out. With the Board of Ed, and this happened a little bit last year, but specifically in 2026, there have been a lot of Robert's Rules questions. And all throughout 2026, there has been a lawyer there, and the lawyer gives their advice, do this, or you have to do that. And sometimes the lawyer's advice of how to do the procedure is not the same as what Robert's Rules says the procedure is, right? So there's a conflict there, which not only creates confusion, but also causes frustration, not only for the board members, but also for the public. And over time, hey, this is what Robert's Rules says, is said in certain tones, and has become more and more aggressive throughout the meetings. And once again, this is something that, hey, we have to do this, we have to do that, comes up multiple times in multiple meetings. And once again, the information does not always coincide. So I tell you this because it did come up multiple times again in this meeting. So the meeting opens, the Pledge of Allegiance is said, everybody goes or the members go into executive session, we talk and have a great time, the members come out, we resume, the superintendent gives his presentation. This time there were actually a lot of students. He presented Sophia Aguilar with the Unsung Hero Award. She got a standing ovation. Then she also got, along with a lot of students, it was so impressive how many of them there were, the bilingual literacy seal. And I was told that in order to get that, you basically need to pass the equivalent of the English AP exam in that language. So to me, that is extremely impressive. Good job, guys. Then they went into the meeting, and with the meeting, I'm not going to talk about each thing like I do with the mayor and council. One, because it's not as clearly lined out. But two, because the meat and potatoes of this meeting was really in the discussion items. So I am going to say that there are discussions for the Board of Ed, and then it opens up to if anybody has anything on the agenda that they want to talk about. So first they go to the board members, and Ms. Hoffman says, yeah, I would like to pull the past policies out. I think the past policies should be separate from the consent agenda. So as we talked about with the mayor and council, consent agenda is basically where they take a whole bunch of items, they put it together, and you pass it all, right? Now, if anybody on the dais says, hey, I don't agree with that, they can pull it. Or that's what Robert's Rule says. So Ms. Hoffman says, I would like to pull past policy and talk about it. And the lawyer said, well, you can't do that. And she said, well, anybody on the dais can do it. And the lawyer said, only the person who prepared the document can do it. And this I truly don't know. So if anybody knows the answer, who prepares the Board of Ed documents, I think it's the secretary, who I don't think attends the meetings. I could be wrong about that. So if you know, please drop it in the comments. We're always learning. Love to be educated. So the lawyer tells her, you have to make a motion. So she's like, fine, I will make a motion. So she makes the motion and she says, for the use of electronic devices, subsection 3, I would like to, pull that. And she makes the motion. Mr. Grippa seconds it. Mr. Boric and Mr. Murillo say, no, we're not going to pull it for discussion. So then it's time to vote on it. And they're allowed to have a discussion anyway. So then she says, okay, well, I would like to say for, subsection 3, I really feel that your camera should be on. If you're going to be signing in electronically, we should at least see you. We should know that you're not preoccupied. We should know that you're paying attention. If something happens and you need a minute, we can pause, the meeting for you, but we need to be able to see you. We need to know that you're paying attention because these are really important matters. And, everybody agrees with her, right? So then she makes a motion to make that change, to make that addendum, and, it passes unanimously. Now, this is important. There was only 4 members there today. So, Mr. Catolios, Mr. Jacobs, and Mr. Joe were not there. So the reason the motion had originally failed was because if there's a tie, so you had 4 members, if there's a tie, whatever it is fails. So she said, I want to remove it. There was a tie. It failed. So then she said, I want to make an addendum. They all agreed. So that carried and the addendum was made. So then just a comment was made by Mr. Grippa, and he was like, I passed this agenda or addendum saying, hey, put on your cameras, but I really feel that you were elected. You should be here in person. Ms. Hoffman said, I have the same feelings. I feel that the people should be here who are elected, or we should all be virtual. However, it looks like this is going to carry. They have the votes to make this happen. So if this is going to happen, I at least want the cameras on so people at home can see. So there's some sort of accountability and transparency. This is kind of meeting in the middle. Then it opens up to the public, and the public can get up and they can make comments. So first, a member of the public got up with somebody who had previously been on the Board of Ed for a number of years. And she was like, look, you're voting on policy. Where are the policies for us to look at? We as the public don't have the policy here. We can't follow along with you. In fact, when Ms. Hoffman wanted to talk about the policy and they said, okay, well, which one? She went through her book that was provided and that policy wasn't in there. So they actually had to go find the policy for her, pass it, down across the dais to her so she could read it and she could pull out specifics of it. We couldn't follow along because we didn't have it. And she was like, this is really important. And then she also questioned, why wouldn't you let her speak? She just wanted to talk about that. Like, she just wanted to have a discussion about the policy and you wouldn't even let her talk about it. Like, what's going on here? Then another resident got up and said, with regards to the policy, the online, I think it's called electronic device policy for board members or something like that. But it's basically that board members would be able to sign in electronically. And she's like, we're telling you, we've been talking about this for over a year. We're telling you, we do not want this. The public has spoken, the teachers have spoken, the parents have spoken, taxpayers have spoken. Every single person gets up and asks you, please don't do this. And you're doing it anyway. Why are you ignoring us? And if you're going to ignore us because you want to meet virtually anyway, just do it so everybody is virtual, right? As opposed to just you. And this, in the previous comments was echoed by Ms. Hoffman and Mr. Grippa. Ms. Hoffman saying that she just felt that it was unfair that only the board members were able to do it. And it felt like they were giving themselves privileges that they were not extending to the rest of the community. So then somebody got up who is a parent and an educator, and she was basically like, we're here. We're not with our kids. Our kids are at home. You were elected. You should be here. And she did say, hey, if, you're a parent, raise your hand, your kid's at home. And people did. And the lawyer was like, oh, you can't say that. And got all upset. And she said, I'm just trying to give a visual example of the fact that we're giving up our times with our kids to be here. We expect the same from you. Then somebody got up and was like, please just work with us, right? Like, we're saying we don't want this. There are other ways you could do this. You could look at the calendar. If you really can't make things, you can change stuff, make it virtual for everybody. Like, there are other options. Why are you just ignoring what the people are telling you? Then a teacher got up and basically said, hey, you added in the camera addendum. Does that reset the vote? And he did not get answered. And then there was confusion on how that works with Robert rules, which I will get to in a little bit. And then they voted to approve the consent agenda. And Ms. Hoffman said, well, we can't approve the consent agenda as it is because we have to pull out the policy we just spoke about. So that happened. So they did pull out P1-3, which was basically, hey, you have to be on camera. So that kind of resets that. So they're going to bring that back. And next, they have to change the wording on that, right? So once they change the wording on that, then they can vote on it next time. Then there were two other things that I just want to mention. One was the calendar. So the calendar was adopted for next year. And it is important to note that it has the same number of half days as this year. And that comes up in public comments later. So I just wanted to mention that. And then the other thing was there was a personnel matter O-4 and one person abstains because you only had 4 members. When the one person abstains, you were down to 3 people, and that is not quorum. So it was not enough to carry the vote. This thing was done retroactively, so it had already been done. They were just going to vote on it. Like, it happened, they were going to vote on it now, and then because it didn't have quorum, it failed. So there are questions about that. The other, so, you know, and basically everything else went through. The agenda's online. I'm not trying to be shady. I just want to focus on the important part, or what I felt were the important parts of the meeting, which were a lot of the comments and the discussions. So then they said, okay, does anybody have public comments on anything? So the person who was a former board member got up again and basically said, look, I was in your spot. We used to vote on the Board of Ed separately. It wasn't in November. The elections were at a different time, and I wanted to keep it that way. You know, basically that didn't happen. And now it just feels like whoever's in the first and second slot gets put on, even if they really don't care, even if they really don't show up. You know, I gave up time with my family. I feel like you should be here and you should be doing that. This is a 10% increase. That's a huge increase. And, you know, you should be here. You should be paying attention. And she also talked about the fact that the lawyer stopped Ms. Hoffman. And she, you know, she said the attorney is wrong. And she goes, I pulled up Robert's rules. I can read it for you. I only have 5 minutes, so I'm not wasting my 5 minutes reading it for you. But the attorney was wrong. And then she's like, you know, you're cutting teachers, but where are the rest of the cuts going to be? We don't know. We haven't seen the budget. We don't see the policy. Like, what's going on here? Then another, person got up. This person, you know, her children graduated, but she used to come to a lot of board meetings, and she also used to work in the school. And she's like, I was really disappointed that last meeting was canceled, and I want to know why it was canceled. The budget is a really big deal. You know, I was really active as a parent, and I'm going to be coming back because I don't like what I saw. I wasn't able to make the last meeting, you know, that was held. I was able to watch it via Facebook, so that makes me really happy that people are watching the live stream and they're able to follow along with the agendas, you know, the links that are shared. That made me really happy. And she said, you know, I went back, and the highest increase up until this point was in 2014, it was 4%. And this is 10%. This is like catastrophic. And like, people aren't here. And all I'm hearing is about these teacher cuts. And why aren't you making cuts at the top? Why aren't you cutting admins? We're really top heavy. They make the highest salaries. Like, why are those people being ignored? Also, what about retirees? And she said 6 retirees. There were 4 tonight. Obviously, there are more that go through on other dates. And she said, are you filling those positions? And, you know, where are the rest of the cuts coming from? Then another person got up and said, I was here for the budget presentation. It was very light, and it wasn't a full budget presentation. I was also here for the chronic absenteeism. And you said the number one reason in, I believe it was 3 schools, was the half days, that for the little kids, the half days, the parents can't, find daycare or childcare, so they just don't send their kids to school that day. And now you have a calendar that came out and had the same numbers. So what was the point of identifying what the problem was if you're not going to fix the problem? Then a teacher who was also a resident in town got up and was like, as a resident, there's a problem. I accept that there is a $2.3 million burden because of the insurance, but it can't all come from, student interfacing positions, which are basically those teacher positions. And she said, the students are the ones getting hurt, and, you have to balance this out. You have to have values. Like, it can't all just be teachers because you're going to have overcrowding in the classrooms. Then another teacher got up and was like, we support this community as teachers. We put our personal money into things. We buy stuff from fundraisers. The NJEA, the Teacher Association, goes and gets grants and gets funding and helps support things throughout the community and pay when the districts can't. And she's like, now these staff reductions are going to result in overcrowding in the classroom. High performer kids are going to suffer because there's going to be less AP options. The special ed staff students are going to suffer. What has been put into cutting the fat? And that question was asked a couple times, like, have you looked into other programs? Have you looked into top positions? And all of the teachers made really impassioned speeches. You can go on and you can watch for yourself, not to diminish them speaking from their heart, but there were 3 other teachers who got up and spoke, and they were really just saying, like, we care about these kids, we put everything into it, cutting just the teachers doesn't seem right, and what else can be done, please reconsider. And there was specific attention on the math department. So, it was the STEM supervisor who got up, but he basically said when he started, there were 7 RMHS math teachers. Now there are 4, and that puts a great strain on them to provide, the classes and the detail and, I don't want to say service, but like the attention to each student, right? Then, somebody who is a parent and a council member got up, and, an admin in another town, invited the board to RBA opening day, talked about the Borough Hall field trips, and thanks the NJ, or the honor students, maybe the junior honor students, for volunteering at the egg hunt. Talked about a Slocum School Neurodivergence Day, and basically said the 8th graders came, and wanted to, said, can you protect our teachers? Then there was another comment, and basically it was, in the past, when tax increases came out, it gave a breakdown, like this would be X amount for each house, X percent or X dollars for each house. Nobody has seen that. Then, the comment was, we also haven't seen the budgets, right? So the board's saying they want to be transparent, but we have not seen this budget. We haven't seen line item budgets. And there was, there was a presentation, but the presentation was like a really high overview. We didn't see like math department's getting this much, sports are getting this much. Not only like, hey, where are we making cuts from last year, but what is projected for this year at all? We didn't see any kind of line item budget. Once again, if you find it, please put it in the link below. And then it was saying, online you have positions that are hiring. You're saying you're hiring a math teacher and you just laid a math teacher off. And that's kind of gross, right? Like that's not cool. And the question came up to, what is the number of students that are actually allowed in a classroom? Because, there is a legal number, and it goes by square footage, right? And, it changes for certain grades. I am not an educator. I don't know it off the top of my head. You can find it online. And I was just like, can we legally put that many students in a classroom? Teacher went and looked. It was not posted, in the classroom. The fire chief went to go look as well, just to see, like, maybe she missed something. He couldn't find it either. And then the question was, how much is the lawyer getting paid, right? Because, multiple people from the same law firm have given advice, specifically with Robert's rule. One lawyer's doing things in a way that adds a significant amount of time to the meeting. So the question was, every single meeting we have had a lawyer. How much is that costing us? And At what point does it go to overtime? Because prior to COVID, after 10 o'clock, they got a bonus. So when we go past 10, which we did not do for this meeting, but the past 2 meetings had gone past 10, is there a bonus that is being paid? And, why do we have them here if their interpretation of Robert's rules is not the interpretation that everybody else has, right? So that really creates questions. So then Kelvin, and he did say that the budget is on the website. And I clarified, I'm like, okay, so it wasn't part of the agendas. They weren't printed. We didn't have them here. And I said to clarify, they were not part of the agenda. I did not get an answer, so I'm going to assume that it was a yes. Then the president said, finance had 4 meetings. And he did answer Mrs. March. One of the questions is, would retired positions be filled? And the answer was no, that if people retired, those positions would not be filled. Then one of the board members said, look, this problem didn't happen overnight. It built up. Cuts are going to be made. You asked, are we looking into admin? And yes, that's going to happen. The lawyer told him he couldn't talk anymore about that, so he did stop. Then another member said, are we going on to new business? They opened up to new business for the board. And she basically said, look, are there staples from different areas? We brought up different ideas. We spoke out about it. What else is being done other than cutting teachers? Like, what else is being done? Now, this Ms. Hoffman is not on the finance committee, so she is not privy to those discussions because committee groups can only be, it has to be under quorum, so it's only 3 people, right? So one suggestion that was made in the last comment that was by the public was, why don't you do a committee as a whole? That way everybody could see it. You could talk about what you might want to do. And let people see it. Show them the transparency you're saying you're going to have. At least let the other board members see what you're talking about. Because right now, only 3 board members know what's going on with the budget. The rest don't, apparently. So she's saying, like, hey, what's going on? Kind of give me an update. Are there ideas, that we spoke about? I'll reach out to Ralph or Mr. Murillo, who's the president, and I'll say, hey, I have an idea. And then he will answer back, oh, this is something we've already talked about, or this is something we're already doing. And she said, that's good, but we're kind of doing double and triple work. Maybe if we all get together, and we work as one group, we can put our heads together, and then we're also not replicating, coming up with ideas and stuff like that. And then Mr. Murillo said, he did ask, so this conversation was basically like, if we kept to that 2%, what would happen? What would staying at 2% mean? And it meant closing at least 1 school. And then Mr. Murillo said, Ms. Hoffman, you did take this really seriously. You gave me a long list of ideas and ways to cut larger chunks of the budget. One of the teachers did say, hey, link it. We pay $30,000 for this program, right? There are other programs that were mentioned that are not really effective, maybe more for admin, but the teachers aren't really using them. Some of them the teachers hate. The teachers absolutely hate them. Like, why don't you cut that to save money, right? And Mr. Murillo said, we're looking into that. We have that list. And then Mr. Grippa asked if Mr. Murillo got his suggestions, and Mr. Murillo said he did not. So then Ms. Hoffman said, she basically made a comment and she said, look, there were different conferences I could have gone to, and the town pays for it. And I chose, as a leader, to not go to that. We need to start at the top. So if I, even though I kind of wanted to go to these conferences, I didn't want to do it because it was, $200 here, $120 here. No, that's not going to save a job, but we need to make cuts. So if you've gone to a conference before, please consider not going, saving, the district money. Really go to the things that are paid for by the state or that are free for us, like the Bergen County meeting. And she really asked not just the other board members, but also think that she was talking to the administration. Like, please don't go to conferences and put in for hotels and stuff like that when we're cutting teachers. Lead by example from the top. And then they closed the meeting. So that was the recap. The agenda's online. Robert's Rules is online. You can look up that. And also, if anybody can find the budget, once again, please share that in the comments below. Thank you.